Hello chaps and chapettes. I know I said that my next video would be an update video, but I'm afraid that's going to have to wait because I've been tagged in a Doctor Who tag by Barry Aldridge, of all people. And, you know, when you're tagged by Barry Aldridge in such illustrious company as Yoz Creative, Mikola, and frickin' Charlie is so cool, like, you damn well do the tag. So, it's a Doctor Who tag, and I have to answer various different questions about Doctor Who. So, starting off controversially, as I mean to go on, my favourite Doctor is number 8, Paul McGann. There's a number of reasons for this. One, I feel he's a completely wasted resource in terms of the fact that he's only got just over 90 minutes screen time, at least that was before Night of the Doctor, on which more later. But for me, he was the first new Doctor, and he came into the programme at around about the time that I discovered it, or certainly shortly afterwards. And I remember seeing his TV movie and enjoying it at the time and being very sad that it didn't go on and lead to a whole new series. Rewatching it now, I obviously understand that there's quite a few things wrong with it, but it was the first new piece of Doctor Who. I mean, I'm not sure how many people who are watching the new series now really quite gathered that in 1996 this was a huge deal. Doctor Who had been off the air for 8 years and had kind of languished in the wilderness years, as Luke refers to them. But another big contributor to the fact that he's my favourite Doctor is that I got to know his Doctor through the Big Finish audios, and that has merely cemented my opinion that he really still deserves a TV series and hasn't got one. Also, I think now he straddles this really interesting era in the show's history between the classic and the modern. And for my money, he kind of embodies the better side of both. Okay, so moving on. My favourite Doctor Who story ever. Very difficult, but I'm probably gonna have to say The Deadly Assassin. It's a 4th Doctor story set on Gallifrey, and he's recalled there to kind of solve the mystery of who assassinated the President of the High Council. Spoilers, it was the Master. For me, the show deals with a lot of really interesting concepts, like loyalty, betrayal, revenge, and it's one of the first times, I think, certainly that we see the Doctor being completely out of his depth in terms of he's dealing with a familiar enemy but in unfamiliar territory, made all the more ironic that it is the most familiar territory to him. He is on his home planet. And it's a very good example also of a story that proves that you don't have to have the companions be the lens through which you view the Doctor. There aren't any companions in this story. It's one of the things I like most about it. Not that I have a downer on companions, as we'll see. I think my choice for favourite companion is actually the same as Luke's, Romana. Specifically the second incarnation of Romana, although both are very good. I think that being an emotional and intellectual fall for the Doctor is very good. Also, even though she wasn't human, it didn't detract from her relatability, in that, you know, she's going around the universe with this guy who's, when she's first introduced to him, you get the impression that she doesn't think all that much of him, but over the course of the time she's with him, she grows to like and respect him, and you can imagine that after they part company, she's going to go off and be, well, very much like him. It's a theme that kind of permeates a lot of the Doctor's companions, especially in the modern series. But yeah, I've always had a soft spot for Romana. My first ever Doctor Who story. I love talking about this because it was one of the most formative moments, I think, in my life. I was about 5 or 6, and it was a rerun of Planet of the Daleks with John Pertwee. Obviously sometime in the 90s. And interestingly enough, I think this might have been one that Luke mentioned in his video as well. But not only was I completely and utterly captivated by this old TV show that had such a brilliant high concept and, you know, a really interesting, compelling hero and dastardly villains and just an amazing piece of sci-fi, but it was the first time I ever remember looking at something that I saw on the TV and thinking, wait a minute, people do this for a living? Where do I sign up? So, yeah, it is... it's not the best Doctor Who story in the world, but it is probably the one that, in terms of myself, my fandom, my liking of the show, and my own career choice of being an actor, has the most to answer for. My favourite era of the show. Now, I have to point out, I feel at this point, that I've talked about my favourite Doctor and my favourite companion and my favourite episodes and whatnot. But there's no part of this show that I actively dislike. There are some that are obviously better than others, but there's nothing really, even when you get into some of the more questionable choices the show has made, there's nothing really that I definitely think, oh no, that's out of character, or I really dislike this. So, that being the case, going forward, my favourite era is probably the Philip Hinchcliffe type era. Early to mid 4th Doctor. I think the stories genuinely had a really nice atmosphere of gothic horror about them. There was a lot of innovative stories, like The Talons of Wen Chiang or The Horror of Fang Rock. It was a period where the writing was particularly solid. The relationship between the Doctor and his companion Leela was brilliant. There was a really nice arc. And it was the point in the show's history where I think it was, until now, arguably at its highest point. It was also, because of that, at its most controversial. Like, I remember specifically there was a story, Brain of Morbius, where there was quite a graphic scene where a guy gets shot, and you're just thinking that would be completely unthinkable on the modern show now, which I think is a shame, because, not to say that it speaks down, but it limits the scope of what can be done. Also, just as a caveat, I would say that quite a lot of the stuff in the modern era of the show that harkens back to that sort of thing is, well, for me at least, examples of where the show really shines. What is my favourite pre- or post-regeneration episode? Now, this has changed recently, no pun, but it used to be quite strongly the 11th hour, because I think that was one of the best examples of an introduction to a new Doctor after a particularly popular previous Doctor had left the show, and within 10-15 minutes of it starting, I was sold. This guy was new, fun, energizing, and above all, different and yet the same. It was also quite a really brilliantly, solidly written and paced episode. However, that has recently been knocked off the top spot by Night of the Doctor. And I know, technically speaking, that's not a full episode, but if there's any evidence that Paul McGann does, in fact, deserve a TV series, there's 7 minutes right there. I think that's a really, really nice send-off to that Doctor. It reveals a little bit more about the transition between classic series and modern series, and it also is completely in character for his Doctor in that situation. He's kind of got this slightly tragic edge to how he goes out, which is something that's quite common in Doctor Who regenerations, but particularly I think it seems very right and very fitting for him. And so yeah, my favourite pre or post regeneration story is probably Night of the Doctor now. What's my favourite TARDIS? I actually quite like the current one with Peter Capaldi, although that does feel like a bit of a cop-out, because it's always the one that you're currently on. I did really like the design of the Paul McGann film TARDIS, the sort of almost steampunky cathedral type thing. And that would be interesting to go back to. And I like the comment actually in that. It's like, oh, this seems very low-tech. Low-tech. It's a Type 40 TARDIS. You can go to any planet in the universe at any period in that planet's existence. Who cares what it actually looks like? It's the thing that it does that's the amazing thing. And just finally, my favourite villain. Now, my knee-jerk reaction for this is obviously the Daleks. However, there is a one-shot villain which I really enjoyed from the Pirate Planet. And the captain in the Pirate Planet is an interesting character because he's for the majority of the episode set up as the big bad and is ultimately revealed just to be an underling. But he has a brilliant sequence with the Doctor where he discovers that what the Pirate Planet has been doing has been basically consuming other planets in order to gain their energy. And he's been walking down the row of the mummified remains of planets, and he has this brilliant interchange with the Doctor, and it's one of the it might be a little bit overplayed by today's standards, but I think it's a really interesting discussion they have about, you know, we're doing this so that we can survive. Because, but there's no point. What's all of this for? You've just got a gallery of mummified remains of planets for no reason. It's a story written by Douglas Adams, what can I say? Okay, finally, who am I going to tag? I would like to tag my father, Biker Micah 55, Rob Kosh, Shmo Nerd, because I'd like to see what he has to say about this, and curveball here, Tom Webster, because I'd like to hear the other side of the story that Luke tells in his video on the subject. Also, anyone else who wants to do it, but those three, I hope to see videos from you very soon.